Hi everyone, John here with Fountain Pen Love, and in this video I'm going to show you a doodle pattern that I call Petals. Now this pattern is fairly simple to do and has a lot of variations that you can do with it, so you should be able to doodle this one over and over again and still enjoy it every single time. Speaking of enjoying, if you're enjoying this video, please subscribe to this channel. You'll get updates on when new videos come out so you can do new doodles every single week. But for now, go ahead and grab a pen and paper, find someplace cozy to sit, and let's doodle. Alright, so today we're going to be doing the Petals pattern, and before we dive in and actually start doing the doodle, I'm going to show you a couple examples of how it looks. So this example, this particular doodle I did, this main part here is what we're going to be doing today. All this outline was just kind of extra to give it a little different variation, but this green part is what we're going to be working on today. You can see it kind of has these central pieces and then petals that come out from that central piece. It's kind of like a flower, but not like any flower I've really ever seen. This is another version I did with darker ink. It's not, maybe it is black, I'm not sure. But you know, sometimes you just don't want color, you want something really dark and moody, and that's what I got here. But I do want to point out, these, I really like the shape of these, how these turned out. So we're gonna try and get you in this direction today, see if we can get some of these more elongated ones. I kind of think they look like hyacinths, so I guess they do look like flowers, but not typical flowers. They're just a little bit of a different pattern. This looks much more like a typical flower that you would expect to see. So enough with the examples, let's show you how to do this pattern. All right, so the first thing that you're gonna want to do to get started with this pattern is draw a circle. I also want to point out I'm going to be using a piece of paper today to protect my doodle paper, just to keep my hand and skin oils off of it. I do think it affects it at a certain point, so I like to make this a habit. Unless I'm going to be moving the paper around a lot, then it can kind of be annoying, so we'll see. Today it should work out just fine. So we've got this first circle here. I'm going to draw a second circle, and this is going to be where everything starts from. Now the size of this circle is going to really depend on your personal preference. I like to start small because, well, I'll show you why in just a little bit here. And on this circle I fill in the first one that I drew, so we have something that looks like that. Now, to start with the petals for the Petals pattern, we're going to go ahead and draw kind of an elongated teardrop shape, and then we're going to draw a second one. So we're gonna have something that looks like that. And for every single one of these, it's gonna be 2 layers, and you're gonna fill in the centerpiece. So just like this first circle we did, for each of these petals, you're gonna draw 2 and fill in the middle one. So go ahead and rotate the paper a little bit and draw another one. Now you'll see the shape that these take can vary. So these 2 have been fairly consistent. I'm gonna draw a third here. I'm going to make it a little more round, and I'm going to make this not go nearly as far away from the centerpiece, so it's going to be a much more consistent shape between the 2. There's no rhyme or reason as to which one you want to do, when you want to do it, why you want to do it. Maybe you want to make one that's really big and has a lot of empty space out here. I'm doing these as examples so that you can see the difference between them. You'll probably want to, for consistency's sake, you know, keep your patterns, keep each petal to be somewhat similar, but you can add that variation in there if you want to. There's no reason you can't. We'll see how this looks. Maybe it'll be a disaster, maybe it'll look great, but I think in past experience, it doesn't make a huge difference if you mix it up. If you keep them consistent, it works out just fine every single time. Now here you can see I got kind of lucky where all of my petals touch each other. So this one connects to this one connects here. So each of these kind of connects up with each other. If yours don't, that's not a big deal. If you have some gaps in here between one and the other, totally fine. That is not a big deal at all. It's one of those things that happens, and you just go ahead and move on, just like we're gonna do here. So the next thing you wanna do once you've kind of gone all the way around this first circle is start in each of these little V's here, and you're just gonna do the same shape over and over again. The only difference here is you're not going all the way back down to this first line. You're just kind of filling in each of these where it basically looks like there's some overlap happening, and this petal that I just drew is coming out from underneath these two that were first. And so we get some depth to our doodle through this process. We have overlap that happens, or at least it's implied, and we start to get this flower shape that we're going for. So I like to go around and do at least 2 full layers before I start to go off in any particular direction. So what that does, it fills in all of these little gaps that we have here and makes sure we have a really strong, solid base to work from. So once you get to this point where we have all of our V's filled in, we have something that's a little more rounded. Now we can start to choose a direction and go off in that direction. Now keep in mind, you don't have to choose a direction. We can just keep going around and around and around if we want to. There is nothing wrong with that. That will totally make a nice looking doodle. But what I want to show you is kind of how we can get some directionality to this doodle, like I showed you in the examples at the very beginning. So you'll just keep on using these V's here, these intersections, and drawing your petals in. But at a certain point, like I said, I kind of want to move off into a direction and have like kind of a hyacinth shape. So maybe you'll use 3, maybe 2, maybe 4. I'm gonna go ahead and go with 3 here. And I'm gonna go, instead of moving around and continuing to do them evenly around this pattern, I'm just gonna work off of these 3 that I just drew. So you see, these are my 3 base ones that I'm kind of working off of. Then it gives me 2, and then I have 1 on top here. Now, that isn't very long, it's not elongated, it's not a super directional thing. So I'm going to work off of these that I just drew and keep adding petals in this direction. So you can see I'm not coming back over here at all. I'm just gonna kind of keep focusing my petals in this one direction. And you could see this one, you know, it came around, it's a bit longer, it's a bit bigger. Totally fine. It's going to just add to the overall look. We do want variation and variety in here. So you can see how this is working. I'm gonna go ahead and finish this up, and as I come to the end, I'll come back to you. Okay, so this one's getting really long. It's not getting any wider, but it's also not getting any narrower. So what I'm gonna do is start to elongate my petals just a little bit. And I'll probably just put 1 right here in the very end. And we're gonna call that done. Now it might look a little awkward on its own here, but as soon as we kind of fill in the rest and this rounds out just a little bit, it won't be nearly so obvious. It'll kind of blend into the rest of the pattern. But that's how you can make these elongated shapes here, is you just pick a few to work off of, build it up, and then eventually you taper it down so that you just have 1 that you end with. So this side, looking pretty good, but I see a lot of empty space over here. So I'm gonna go ahead and move around, and instead of doing the opposite side, I'm just gonna do something up here, and we're just gonna keep going with what we've been doing. I'm gonna make some progress, and then we'll come back. Okay, so we've added a little more depth and dimension to this side to kind of start to balance this out. You want to keep on going with this, where you might add another layer in here and it kind of rounds everything out. But what I want to show you is how you can add a variation to this that will give you kind of a new starting point that you can work off of. So if you remember in the examples that I showed you, it wasn't just this pattern forever on the page. There was some other basically center starting points that I worked off of. So what we're gonna do is, let's go ahead and add one up here. And if you can imagine, you know, we started out with this circle here, we're going to imagine that there's a circle up here that's going to be bigger, kind of in relation to this, but you're not going to see the whole circle because some of it is going to be underneath this. So we're basically going to draw just part of a circle, and it's going to just be 2 lines. So I'm going to draw my first one, let's say here. And you can see here, if this was a full circle, it would just go kind of in this general direction. And I'm going to draw a second one with, this is a decision you can make for yourself, how much space you want between the 2 lines. I like to leave, just, I don't want to make it super skinny or thin. So I'm going to do, maybe I'll start here. And go like that. Now this is a little tricky. It's not the easiest thing to do, but you'll do great. I believe in you. And then just like with this one down here, you're going to fill in the inner portion of the circle. So we get to color a little bit, which is always fun. Okay, now that is done. Kind of looks like an ice cream cone, I suppose, if you want to look at it that way. But it's a petal, it's a flower, it's a shape, it's a doodle. So we're going to go ahead, just like we did here, and start doing some more petals off of this new circle that we just drew. And this gives you an opportunity if you do want to start over, or not start over, but kind of start with a new shape, you can. So maybe I want to make these much more elongated. One nice thing about that, it makes your doodle go faster, it fills up the page faster, but it also changes the way that it looks. On this one, you'll notice I am leaving some space in between here. We'll see how that works out. I'm not going to make it a uniform space between them all. Some might touch, some might almost touch, but I don't want it to be super consistent across the whole thing. I think that helps with the organic feel. It makes it feel like it's more of a living thing instead of a, I guess, mass-produced thing. I don't know if that's the right phrase, but I do like inconsistencies, and I like to have variations within a single doodle so that there is, it's not completely homogeneous and, well, in my opinion, kind of boring if everything is the exact same shape and size. So I like having variations in petal size. I like having variations in spacing between petals. I think I do need another one in here though. Maybe it's going to be a little bit smaller though, just to fill in something like that. So once you have all of your new petals drawn, then you can start just like we did before, and you're going to start expanding out from this new circle that we just drew. The one thing I do want to do is join the old and the new, so I will always have a connection and continuation between these two. Now another thing with these taller petals is you're just going to have this big, long, narrow space that needs filled in. Totally fine, that's how that works, that's how it's supposed to work with these longer ones. So you're going to have the bigger the petal, the more coloring and the more empty space you're going to have. Another thing you might want to do is just draw a partial petal. So I'm going to just come off of this one, and you can see it kind of makes this hidden petal underneath this one. That's another option. You don't have to fully have them all symmetrical. You can kind of have some that come off of or out of another petal if you want to. So I'm going to make some progress on this, and then we will come back and see how we're doing. And I want to point out here that you might have noticed as I'm doing this, I don't always just go one way, then the other, and then back again. I like to jump around. I think that's another way that I keep things looking a little more organic, is I don't completely fill in everything in one row. I like to just kind of randomly jump around to spaces as I see them, and that's another way that I kind of get this growth that can happen. You know, similar to here, I did this intentionally, but it doesn't always happen intentionally. Sometimes it just happens accidentally. If you're doodling, you start zoning out, and maybe you just get stuck in one place for a while, and then suddenly you're like, oh wow, that's kind of grown a lot longer than the rest of the doodle. That happens, and I like accidents like that. You know, Bob Ross would call those happy accidents. that's exactly what they are. They're one of those things that you do and you're like, oh wow, I would have not done that intentionally, but now that I've done it, I really like the way it looks, so I'm gonna see how I can recreate that or replicate it or just find a way to do it again every once in a while. So make sure you are not getting too mechanical in your actions. Make sure you keep some variation in there. Make sure you are trying new things every once in a while. I've got this nice shape starting to form here, but I'm going to move over here and ignore it for a while and see what happens. So let me keep making some progress and then we'll come back and see how things are looking. Just smeared that, wasn't really paying attention. That happens. Just keep on going with it. All right, so let's see how things are looking here. You can see I intentionally didn't fill in some of these spaces because I wanted to kind of have these separate extensions that come out of this new central piece that I drew here. If I'd filled this in, it would just kind of be this round lump. That would totally be fine, but I personally like to have these more extension pieces that come out and really, I don't know, I think they add some extra visual interest to the doodle. Now the one thing I do notice here is I didn't finish filling in this kind of rounded out bit where the new piece joins up with the old. So I think it's nice to step back every once in a while, take a look at your doodle, see how it's looking as far as balance, as far as symmetry, as far as the overall feel, and see what's missing. So I noticed that just kind of seemed like a glaring gap that was didn't belong, so I wanted to go ahead and fill that in. I am going to go ahead and call this done for now. Obviously you can keep on going with this. You can draw, I could draw another rounded piece in one of here, so I could do another piece like this here and go off in different directions. You can have it really nice, small, self-contained if you want to. You could just keep adding, so this is just this nice big rounded piece that might eventually connect into here. It's really up to you how you do this doodle. Like I said at the beginning, there's so many different variations. I could start a new one up here if I wanted to and have it kind of connect, have it overlap, have it as a standalone piece. The variations are endless, so you can keep adding new round bits that are going to let you extend your original doodle. You can start new little petal patterns on the paper and have them all kind of interweave with each other and kind of play with that. You can change the size and shape of your individual petals if you want to, elongate them, make them shorter, have more white space, have more colored space. There's so many things you can do with this, which is one of the reasons I really, really like it. It's a very simple pattern as far as the shapes that you do, but the variations that you can do with it are not, I'm not gonna say endless, but there's a lot of variations you can do. And so I do encourage you to play with this. Use different inks, use different pens. I think this one, a fine nib will work just fine for the shapes, but the coloring portion, there's a lot of coloring in this. Fine nibs just don't look as good and they take a lot longer to fill in spaces with ink. So I'd say, start with a medium nib, see how you like it. A broad should work just fine as well. It's going to give you thicker lines, but it's going to fill in these colored bits a little bit faster. So medium or broad are going to be my chosen nibs for this particular doodle. So please try it out. I hope you enjoy this one. I hope you give it a try. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time with more doodle videos.